what kind of setup should I have if I want to book a Zoom audition session with Laughing Vikings?
Great question, BK Broiler. First of all, we should let people know, again, you're watching this from around the world, so everyone's got different COVID situations happening. Where we are in Toronto right now, film and TV is still open, and film and TV sets are open, and commercials, no theater, no live shows. But what's happened is most of the auditions are Zoom auditions. So it's really important that you're tech savvy enough and you're comfortable with Zoom auditions right now, because it's really what's happening. Everything is self submissions through what are called self tapes, or in our lingo here at Laughing Vikings, just audition sessions, and then we send it into casting. But you really got to know your stuff. And Zoom, in our 2020 and 2021 COVID world, Zoom is one of the booms here. It's a big boom, Zoom, and we are still doing a ton of Zoom sessions. So, to go back to your question, what do you say? Your question was,
what kind of setup should I have if I want to book a Zoom session?
Well, first of all, I would say if you're an actor right now, if you don't have a home studio setup, I don't know what you're waiting for right now. Like, I personally had one long before Laughing Vikings. Then obviously we started Laughing Vikings. It's an essential part of your life right now. If you're any kind of creator, you should have a home studio. A lot of our members here at Laughing Vikings also have their own home setup. Sometimes they're in studio with us to do it in person. Sometimes we're Zooming with them. But what do you need? You don't need anything super fancy. You need a decent backdrop. They usually call it a plain wall. A green screen is decent. Something non-distracting, not with a ton of clutter. Yeah, Brandon's got one right there, studio backdrop. Yeah. In this world, though, green screen and virtual backdrops, as long as you're pulling it off tech-wise and you're not being lost in it, that's a great way to also add to things too, because then you can swap out your backdrop and make it appropriate to the audition. But again, you got to be really sharp. You can't be fading in and out of the backdrop, or pixelating and disappearing like you look like a ghost. But yeah, you don't need much. You need decent lighting. That could be lamps. You could buy softbox lights. You could buy a ring light. They're very popular. In a future episode, we'll actually link up some of our gear and some of our kits here. Yeah. Right? The direct like Amazon links. So if you're like, what are we doing here in the studio? We'll show you our exact setup. Last year, we already had the setup here at Laughing Vikings, but especially COVID, I really doubled down, tripled down on our tech here, our lighting. We've got tripods for our laptops and clips and holders for phones, and new mics and new mixers and all kinds of stuff. And that's because you need to think of yourself as your own media production company right now, as an actor or as a comedian. And you need to have professional gear. If you want to be viewed as a professional, you got to have professional stuff. And we can help you with that.
Yeah, because we'll come on the Zoom session with you, and we'll make sure that you have the proper setup so that we adjust things just as we come on the Zoom session with you, and that way you feel more comfortable, you're ready to go, and like that, as soon as we do those little adjustments just off the top, you'll feel more confident. You'll feel a lot better about doing it over Zoom. Right. And so, as a follow-up question to that, Lars, can Zoom record your sessions? Or do you recommend that they use their phone and just have the reader on Zoom?
Ultimately, you can do whatever you want. Our service that we provide is we record it directly through Zoom. I think the more you're familiar with Zoom, the better right now. And Zoom can really do it all. So maybe we should talk about a little more about how we run those sessions. So when you book online, immediately you'll get your booking confirmation. The Zoom link gets sent out with you. Your session director gets that confirmation. They'll create they'll open up the Zoom link, you join, but then your session director, first thing we'll do is kind of check your tech, check our tech, do a sound check, check your frame, make sure your lighting's equal on either side, make sure there's nothing too distracting, make sure your eye lines are looking good, make sure your mic is reading, that there's not echo, making sure there's nothing distracting that would take away from that Zoom session. And that's tough to do if you don't have a second pair of eyes. And then we pin your video so that it's not toggling back and forth as we're reading. But your session director will pin your video, and then we'll just go take by take by take by take. One of the differences with a Zoom session versus an in-person session is here at the studio when we're doing them in person, we have the ability to play it back on the monitor, and then we can watch it and make adjustments. Within a Zoom session, we're not able to watch the takes back because Zoom doesn't render them till you end the Zoom meeting. So we sort of have to go by feel, but as an actor, that's really hard to, like, you're not seeing yourself, you're not outside your own body, which is the tough thing about directing yourself. So your session director on these Zoom calls is also reading, but also watching your frame, watching your choices. And we obviously will offer up creative choices to you or little corrections. Often it's little eyeline tweaks.
I also like props. I really like adding props now.
Brandon likes little props. Yeah, which is interesting. Back in the day, sometimes props would be a no-no in the room. Like, you're not going to walk into a casting with all kinds of cups and dishes or weapons and guns and stuff. But there's a little more leeway. Again, different casting directors have different opinions, and there's no like general hard rule. It's just, some people have preferences, some people don't. But I also love props if you can use one effectively and it's not just too distracting. I actually did one recently that had tons of props. It was like an infomercial thing where there was arguably too many, but I had fun with it. So yeah, so Zoom sessions. So again, we can help. We are helping on a weekly basis, helping actors who are home because of the lockdown and stay-at-home order, or maybe are immunocompromised or have immunocompromised family members,
or they don't live in Toronto,
yeah, that's true too. We've got people internationally now, which was really cool, because pre-COVID, all of our members were right here in Toronto, even right in Riverside in Toronto East. But now that the world is Zooming, that we have a member in
West Virginia,
like literally all over the place. So if you're stuck and you need a hand, you can go to laughingvikings.com/Zoom and you can book one there. And also, we're still doing the promo for new members. If you join today, you get your first audition session free. So just for $29 for your first month's membership, which saves you $20 off all your sessions, but you get a freebie right off the top. So that's the best way to join us. If you need a hand, then just hit us up, and for the first month's $29, you get one for free right away, which would normally be $69 in studio or $59 via Zoom. But the bottom line is, you got help. You need help to do this, and it just goes smoother versus if you're tired of bugging family members and friends and you're having a rickety setup. We should also talk about some of the other ways that members are using the Zoom sessions here. Do you want to talk about in-studio Zoom sessions or helping people Zoom prep?
Yeah, we also have a spot where you can book the studio to do your Zoom auditions. So if you get an audition for over Zoom, some casting directors prefer it that way instead of doing the self-tapes. You can book the studio. We'll have a reader here for you so that you can rehearse the scene, so that when you come in and we set up your eye line, we set up all the stuff we just talked about, you're ready to go. You've just rehearsed your scene and you're now ready. You're warmed up. You're ready to perform. And that's what we offer here.
That's huge. That's great. And so if you're a person at home, maybe you have a home setup, but if it's a big audition and then you wake up that day and it's like, oh, fuck, there's a guy with a jackhammer doing street construction out front, or there's kids, or there's a lawnmower going, or maybe your internet or something about your sound or lighting isn't perfect. That's
I had that problem before, actually.
Yeah, just you need a reliable studio. You need a quiet spot. You don't want distractions. The last thing you want is to be apologizing throughout your audition for tech things. But even more importantly, even if you have a fantastic setup, the other thing is you don't want to go on to that Zoom session having the first time you've ever run these lines with another human being actually on the Zoom audition itself. So either via Zoom or in studio and prep for a Zoom, our session directors will run the scene. So say you had a 1:30 Zoom session, you book the studio at 1, or you book a Zoom session with us at 1 or 12:30 if you wanted to. And we'll hop on a Zoom with you and run it with you over and over and over again, so that then you can log on to your Zoom at home and do it, but you're fresh and you're rehearsed and you're sharp. Or if you book our studio, like Brandon said, You show up half an hour early before your Zoom session, run it with a session director, figure out all your eye lines, figure out all the beats, and you got all the tech down. You don't have to think about any of that, so that when the time comes to do it live with the production team on the other end of the Zoom call, you're already in it and you've done it a dozen times with a live person. So you're rocking and rolling. So tons of ways for people to up their game.